We're looking at pictures of you on stage with Michael Jackson. You shared a kiss with him on stage. That made big news then, because I believe it was touted as the first public kiss Michael Jackson had ever given another woman.
She walked across a music video set in a short black dress, and the King of Pop stopped everything to say she was the one. From that moment, Tatiana Thumbtzen stepped into a world most people only dream about, sharing a stage with the most famous entertainer on earth. Then came one kiss that changed everything. What happened between Michael Jackson and Tatiana Thumbtzen after that night at Madison Square Garden has fascinated fans for decades. The real story is far more layered than any tabloid ever captured. Stay with this video all the way to the end, because the full truth will surprise you. From ballet classes to the biggest stage in pop. Before the world ever connected the name Tatiana Thumbtzen to Michael Jackson, she was already living a life shaped by serious artistic discipline. Born in Clearwater, Florida, Thumbtzen is of Black Cherokee Indian, Anglo-Cuban heritage, with her Irish surname coming from her adopted father. The details of her upbringing reflect a childhood built around movement and performance, far removed from the entertainment industry she would eventually enter. Tatiana's passion for art began at an early age, with ballet training at just 8 years old. She later moved to New York City at 13 on a scholarship to study at the prestigious School of American Ballet. That kind of commitment at such a young age speaks to how seriously she pursued her craft, long before fame had anything to do with the picture. Training under that institution placed her within a world of rigorous classical technique, the kind that builds not just skill, but resilience. She stated in an interview that through dance, she acquired a contract for modeling, and by age 19, she spent 5 years in Japan to start her career as a model. Once returning to New York, Thumbtzen began working on a Harry Belafonte production film, Beat Street, before moving to Los Angeles at the end of 1986 to begin working on commercials and print work. That move to Los Angeles was a turning point, dropping her into the center of an entertainment world that was moving fast and hungry for new faces. What most people do not realize is that Tatiana had already crossed paths with Michael Jackson before the audition ever came up. While in New York City in 1984, on her way to a casting audition, Thumbtzen stumbled upon Jackson, who was alone and dressed casually in a white shirt and a cap. She stated she wanted to stop by and talk to him, but that she couldn't figure out what to say to Jackson. Thumbtzen followed him for 5 blocks until she realized she'd be late for her audition. That detail alone says something about the effect Michael Jackson had on people long before they ever worked together. She was a trained professional on her way to a job and still found herself following him down the street, speechless. The actual audition for the music video arrived without any advance notice of who it was for. In 1987, Thumbtzen auditioned for a music video shoot without being told what it was exactly or who it was for. It took place on a street where a group of guys would hassle her character. Jackson's team was impressed with her work, and she attended a dress rehearsal. Over 200 women reportedly tried for the same role. From what one of the writers of the video would tell her, Michael's comment after seeing her audition tape was that she was the one and the rest were extras. That is the kind of statement that rewrites a person's life in an instant. The music video for The Way You Make Me Feel was directed by Joe Pytka and was filmed in June 1987, choreographed by Jackson and Vincent Patterson, with dance moves heavily influenced by the 1961 film West Side Story. The concept placed Tatiana at the center of the story as a woman being pursued through city streets, and the chemistry between her and Jackson on screen felt entirely real to audiences watching because, according to her, much of what happened on set carried a genuine charge. According to Thumbtzen, during the filming of the video, Jackson flirted with her. The ending scene of the video was going to feature the actress kissing Jackson, although the director asked her not to do so, as he was too shy for that. This led to the two simply hugging. That small moment reveals something important about how the dynamic between them worked, from the very beginning. There was a boundary. There was shyness on his side. And there was clearly something more than professional courtesy on both ends. When the video dropped on October 31st, 1987, as the third single from the Bad album, it became a pop culture touchstone overnight, and Tatiana Thumbtzen became a face that millions of people recognized, even if most could not name her. The tour, the kiss, and the night that changed everything. Now that the foundation of who she is and how she entered this world has been established, what happens next is the part of the story that most people think they know, but actually only have fragments of. The moments leading up to the kiss matter just as much as the kiss itself, and they have rarely been told in the right order. In January 1988, Tatiana went to see Michael at the set of Leave Me Alone. He was pleased with her arrival, and the pair participated in a photo shoot together. Tatiana performed with Jackson on stage during several shows of the Bad World Tour for The Way You Make Me Feel. This allowed Jackson to get to know her more while traveling around the world. Being selected to perform on the Bad World Tour was not a small thing. This was the largest solo concert tour the world had seen at that point, and Jackson was at the absolute apex of his global fame. On March 2, 1988, Tatiana performed alongside Jackson at The Way You Make Me Feel during the Grammy Awards. The ceremony was held at Radio City Music Hall in New York, and Jackson performed 2 songs that night, with Tatiana by his side for the opening number. The Jackson family were reportedly fond of Tatiana by this point, and members of the extended family had even given her the affectionate nickname of Tatiana Jackson. Then came March 3, 1988. Michael gave a benefit concert at Madison Square Garden in New York City for the United Negro College Fund, with celebrity guests including Brooke Shields, Quincy Jones, Prince, Lionel Richie, Stevie Wonder, Madonna, the New York City mayor, and the Jackson family. The night was already historic before it even began, and Tatiana was right in the middle of it. Due to the very little private time together, Thumbtzen decided to kiss Jackson on his cheek during that first concert. The dancers then told her she made Michael's day, as she heard him giggle through every note he sang. That reaction from Michael was encouraging enough that she decided to push further the following night. She called Jackson to ask if it would be okay to take the kiss a step further. During the concert, she kissed him on the lips. According to her own account in interviews, the moment happened in full view of thousands of people, and the crowd's reaction was electric. She described stepping onto the stage with her heart fluttering and thinking for a few seconds about whether or not to follow through on the kiss. As she stepped up to him and put her arms around his collar, he looked deep into her eyes. She placed her arm around his waist and kissed him, and she nearly fell off the stage because of the adrenaline rush in her body. What followed backstage was the complete opposite of that electricity. Michael's manager, Frank DeLeo, walked past. After every prior show, DeLeo would tap her on the shoulder and tell her how great she was. That night, he didn't say a word, but instead gave her what she described as the most evil look she had ever seen. Then Miko Brando, son of Marlon Brando and a close friend of Jackson, confronted her backstage with extreme hostility, completely unaware that she and Michael had spoken beforehand about the kiss. Tatiana and Michael had actually agreed on the kiss before it happened. No one else was privy to this but them. She believed that made some people not only jealous, but angry. The fact that their communication was private meant no one in Jackson's team could verify it. And that absence of information became the gap through which her entire connection to Michael would later fall. Fired without a word, and the career that paid the price. Few chapters in this story are more quietly devastating than what came next, and understanding it fully requires stepping back from the drama of the kiss itself to look at what the removal from the tour actually cost Tatiana in real and lasting terms. After an interview at a talk show where she was asked about her relationship with Michael and gave a careful response, Jackson's manager, Frank DeLeo, decided to fire Tatiana from Jackson's team. The actress never got to talk with Jackson again, with no explanation provided, no conversation, no closure, no call from Michael himself, just silence, followed by the news that she had been replaced. She was fired from the tour by Jackson's manager after the kissing incident, and Sheryl Crow took her place, assuming the role during the July 15, 1988 show at Wembley Stadium in London. For someone who had stood at the Grammy Awards beside the biggest pop star on the planet just weeks earlier, the fall was abrupt and devastating. She went home and cried incredibly hard over both the lost opportunity and over losing Michael. His mother, Catherine, was also puzzled by what had happened. She later invited Tatiana several times to the Jackson compound in Encino, and they talked at length. Catherine Jackson's willingness to maintain that connection suggests the firing was not a family decision, and that not everyone around Michael understood or agreed with what had happened. The controversy had a long-lasting impact on Tatiana's career. Casting agents saw her as the girl who starred in a Michael Jackson music video. She also revealed that she felt she wasn't paid enough for all her work. Over time, the actress began facing financial troubles. That is the brutal mathematics of how fame can work against a person. The same association that made her recognizable also made her impossible to cast as anything else. Every door she walked through came with an asterisk attached to it. She tried to find a way forward through Jackson's father. After leaving the tour, Joseph Jackson wanted to sign Tatiana to a management contract. Like Michael's mother, he also sympathized with her and didn't like what had happened to her on the tour. After a while, she realized that Joseph wasn't going to be able to help her, and in fact, suspected that being under contract to him was probably hurting her career instead of building it. Throughout all of this, she tried several more times to connect with Michael directly. According to details in her book, there were moments at public events where she saw him and attempted to speak, and each time something or someone pulled him away before a real conversation could happen. There were accounts of walkie-talkie communications backstage, signaling that Michael did not want to see or speak to her during certain events. Whether that instruction came from Michael himself or from people managing his movements is a question she never got to ask him directly, and that uncertainty followed her for years. She appeared on The Tonight Show with Ross Schaefer, and when asked if she and Michael were dating, stated their relationship was strictly professional. That kind of public restraint, given everything she was privately experiencing, reveals how carefully she was trying to manage the narrative even while everything around her was falling apart. What her legacy looks like now. Given everything that had unfolded over years of silence and confusion, what Tatiana ultimately chose to do with her story reveals something meaningful about how she processed what happened and what she wanted people to understand about Michael Jackson and about herself. Tatiana wrote that she was severely depressed after learning she was replaced by another dancer for the Bad Tour. She detailed going through a great battle with depression, crying often and extremely hard. She felt bombarded with questions about why someone else was doing her part, and wrote that it got to where she hated leaving her house and felt she did not want to live. That kind of deep withdrawal from public life following such a public rise speaks to how completely her identity had become tied to that moment with Michael, and how sharply painful it was when it ended without explanation. Her response to the 1993 sexual misconduct accusations against Michael Jackson positioned her in a complicated public space. As Jackson faced the first accusations of sexual abuse in 1993, Tatiana appeared in more talk shows, including Howard Stern's show, where she made statements about having had a romantic relationship with him for 18 months. She later acknowledged in her own book that those statements were not entirely truthful, and that admission opened her up to significant public criticism. However, her underlying defense of Jackson as a person remained consistent, even when the specific claims she made were exaggerated. Her memoir, The Way He Made Me Feel, co-authored with Tonya Ryan and published in 2004, described her experiences with life in Hollywood, her numerous encounters with celebrities, her starring role in the music video, and being the first woman to publicly kiss Michael Jackson. The book was a deeply personal account, written from the perspective of someone who had spent years processing an experience that had no clean resolution. It drew both sympathy and criticism, with some readers pointing out inconsistencies between different versions of events she had told over the years, and others appreciating the honesty with which she confronted her own complicated feelings about what had happened. A second book followed in 2011. Michael and Tatiana, The King of My Heart, continued where the first left off, and in interviews around that time, Tatiana spoke with a measured reflectiveness that differed from the rawness of the earlier memoir. She had by then processed more of the grief around losing Michael, around losing the career she had hoped would follow the video, and around never receiving the direct explanation she deserved. Shortly after Jackson's death in June 2009, she met his manager Frank DiLeo, and they settled their differences before DiLeo's passing in 2011. That quiet reconciliation with the man who had ended her connection to Michael carries a weight all its own. It did not undo what had happened, but it closed a chapter that had stayed open for over 2 decades. Tatiana also attended Michael Jackson's final funeral service on September 3, 2009, at Forest Lawn Memorial Park. Katherine Jackson, who had remained in contact with her over the years, invited her. That invitation meant something beyond simple courtesy. It acknowledged that Tatiana had been part of Michael's world in a way that deserved recognition, even if the circumstances of her departure from that world had never been fully explained or resolved. Her acting career, while it never reached the heights many believed it could after the video, included roles in The Perfect Model in 1988, Identity Crisis in 1989, and The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air in 1990. She also appeared in the opening credits of the television series A Different World. These credits tell the story of a career that kept moving even when the industry had decided to define her by one association. She was working, she was performing, and she was building something beyond the shadow of what had ended so abruptly. Looking at Tatiana Thumbtzen in 2026, at 65 years old, what emerges is the picture of a woman who never stopped insisting that her version of events deserved to be heard. The story of the kiss and the firing is often treated as a footnote in the larger history of Michael Jackson, a curiosity attached to a famous music video. But for Tatiana, it was the defining event of her professional life and a deeply personal loss that took years to process. She was there. She knew him. And what happened to her after that night matters, regardless of how it has been reduced or dismissed over time. The broader lesson in her story is one that goes beyond celebrity gossip. It is about what happens to people who get close to enormous power and fame and then are discarded when that proximity becomes inconvenient for those at the center. Tatiana Thumbtzen did not do anything that warranted the silence she received. A kiss that Michael himself had agreed to resulted in her losing her livelihood, her momentum, and her direct connection to the person she cared about most at that moment in her life. The people who made that decision never had to explain it to her, and she spent decades carrying the weight of a door that closed without warning. What she chose to do with that weight, writing about it, speaking about it, and refusing to let the story disappear into the background of someone else's legacy, is a form of courage that does not always get named as such. Tatiana Thumbtzen broke her silence, not once but repeatedly, across different decades and different formats, always returning to the same core truth. She was there, it mattered, and the world deserved to know what really happened after the kiss. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.